sure you get it then. All right, everyone, quiet down, please. Okay, so just a quick reminder of our schedule. Make sure that you check in. Make sure you click all the way through on the check-ins. If you have any issues with, excuse me, with your check-in, please see me at the end of class so that I'm aware. Just a reminder that next week your second fashion critique is due. You are welcome to submit it at any time before next week, but it is due by 4:10 p.m. next Monday, 3/14, and absolutely no late assignments will be accepted. So please get it in early, and I'll even try to grade it early so that you have your grade ahead of time walking into next week. By now you guys know the drill. Make sure that you attend a fashion event and answer the questions about it. The questions are posted in a Word document so you can see them before submitting your work and before going to the event. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, great. Lecture prep questions. I got a lot of great emails this week. If you email me, you're welcome to email me back with your answer immediately following class. If you did not email me, then you need to have a printed out version of your questions with a handwritten answer that you hand to me at the end of class today. And I look forward to hearing some of your questions. A reminder about the midterm, I guess we've still got about a month to go until the midterm, but it's April 4th. You can be reading the State of the Fashion 2022 now to get ahead of it and just answer the questions the week of, but you'll have a week to complete when it comes due. Some reminders, please, please, please respect our speaker's time today. No cell phones, no chatting with your neighbor. You guys have been doing a great job sitting near the front. Keep up the great work. And today is being recorded. So as we talked about last week, you're only going to be heard if you come down and use the microphone in the front. If it's impossible for you to do that, we'll still call on you. It's just I'll probably try to repeat your question so that it gets heard. Follow along on social media for some upcoming extra credit and other fun announcements. I hope to see more of you there. Last time I posted an extra credit assignment, I feel like I only heard from about 5 of you, so it's definitely an opportunity. Make sure that you're paying attention. Quick reminder on our schedule, today we have Nicole Fischelis joining us, and next week we have the team from Carolina Herrera coming, both Ludwig Heismeyer and Rebecca Kita in product development and sales respectively. The following week, Jeriana San Juan, a costume designer and former FIT grad, will be joining us. Joanna Buchanan comes the following week, who's the founder of a brand by her own name, to talk to you guys all about launching a company. Patricia Mita, who is the director of women's wear at Fashion Snoops, will join us in week 9. We do not have class on April 11th because it is spring break. But when we return, Molly Taylor, who's the chief merchant from Saks Offith, will be coming in that day. So with that, I'd love to welcome Nicole Fischelis. She's a native Parisian, ranked among the top 50 most powerful and influential figures in fashion, and has brought a global perspective to America's department stores. Renowned for her appreciation of integrity, design, industry experts say Nicole has a laser-focused eye for scouting talent and champion designers such as Chloé, Christian Lacroix, Thierry Mugler, Jean-Charles de Castelbajac, Alexander McQueen, and Jeremy Scott, just to name a few. Former creative director, global forecaster, and visual storyteller for Saks Fifth Avenue, Ferragamo, and Macy's, Nicole continues to consult worldwide and also sits on FGI's board of directors. Please join me in welcoming Nicole to the stage.
Hello. Bonjour.
Welcome. Can you please kick off by just giving us a little more color around your background and your career path up until now?
Oh, you want me to start with?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm very happy to be here. This place is really very iconic to me because I've been attending on many occasions some incredible people coming and talk here. So I'm very honored to be here today. I started my career in Paris at a very young age. I was kind of a free spirit, a little bit of a rebel, not so much, but I was a good student, but I didn't really want to continue my studying. And I was very lucky because my parents supported me and let me kind of, do what I wanted to do. So I was introduced into a buying office at the time in Paris called Gimbel Sachs. It was owned by the Gimbel store and the Saks Fifth Avenue. And the office was also representing a lot of stores in America, in Canada, like Neiman Marcus, Holt Renfrew, etc. So when I started there, I was, at the lower level, an assistant, buying coffee, newspaper, and cigarette to two of my boss who were real bitches. And when they hired me, I spoke English still with the same French accent. But the boss said, "What am I going to do with this kid?" Well, this kid was passionate about fashion, looking at all the trade fair, going in the most unexpected places, and discovered a lot of designers that were recognized in the 80s and then in the 90s. I remember going to Kenzo in his little atelier when he just moved to Paris, and I still have in my mind the first dress he designed. And you know what? Today, it could still be on a runway in a collection. It's incredible how real, original talent with identity and integrity, whatever they have done, whatever year they have done it, is still relevant today in most cases. Last season I was looking at some of the runway in New York, and I was in Paris 2 months ago. I saw the retrospective, that's another example, of Thierry Mugler. Thierry Mugler I discovered in France also in the late 80s. The rep called me at my office and said, "I want to show you something." I said, "Sure, come." At the time, they would come with a suitcase to the buying office, open the suitcase on my desk, and I saw this incredible jacket that she pulled out of a suitcase with the shoulder and the seaming and the peplum. I had never seen anything like that. I went crazy, and a few weeks later, the Saks team was in Paris to buy, during the ready-to-wear collection, and we bought the collection exclusively. For a few years, we launched the Angel perfume at Saks. At the time, I was working in New York. But, what I'm saying is, he was, if you've seen his work, and I hope you have, I was looking at some collection in Harlem last season. There was a big show, Harlem Designer, and I saw some clothes that were literally very much like what he used to do, all the cutout and body conscious, which is still a very big trend today. So, it's interesting not to see what's happening, on the street or on the runway. You have to merge two today because more and more it's what's happening,
Yeah, that's great.
So what else? So anyway, I worked in Paris for several years, and I learned the business of making clothes. What the clothes look inside is just as important as what they look outside. And the buyer at the time were themselves, very kind of social lady. The store were owned by families. They were not owned by very big groups. So the buyer would come to Paris, stay at the Ritz, and I would take them around, show what I had found, what I liked, and, working with them, I learned a lot about the art. I call it the art of craft, fashion, couture, etc. And I did that for many years, several years. Then I was involved with all product for Saks. Then I took over Saks buying office in Europe. And then one day, out of the blue, the chairman of Saks, it was 1991, was on his way back to New York and said to me, there's a fashion director, vice president position in New York. If you want it, it's yours. And I looked at him, I said, he was in his car going back to the airport. I said, why not? And I came here a couple of months later, and I used to come regularly when I was based in Europe because Saks did incredible trunk shows for Chloé when Karl Lagerfeld was designing Chloé. So the business was so strong that one day the president of Saks said, you know, we would like to do trunk shows. We would take the collection to more stores. And the owner said, we don't know what trunk show is. We don't want to do trunk show. But if you want to do it, the only person who will allow to take the collection with her is Nicole Fischelis. So that's how I started to come to America twice a year, going in 5 different key cities, seeing who the customer was from Chicago to Miami to Los Angeles, etc., the key city and Palm Beach, the different profile of the customer. And Karl would come over when there was a special fragrance launch or something. You know, there were like 3-week trip. I would do 4 or 5 cities, meeting with a customer. So
Wow.
really, that's my background. Yeah. And you know, and then I discovered that's my passion. A lot of designer in America as well, and you know, I was going to for Saks. I reopened a fashion office. They basically didn't have any fashion office. So what did I do? I did trend presentation of recap of the runway: New York, Paris, London, Milano. Telling them, you know, key item, must have, color direction, fabric direction, print direction. I was involved with the visual people. I brought in a lot of artists to do a visual presentation in the window. It was quite amazing, and I was working with marketing, choosing all the catalog and the newspaper, and working on the theme of each of the catalogs. So it was it was fashion director, but it's really a job that I built myself, working for the image of the company. Like I would have regular meeting with the visual and decide what we would do from one month to another in the window, what were the story, how. And there's a lot of anecdotes. We don't really have the time, but I can tell you one of the designers that you probably all know about is Alexander McQueen. So I was in London. I love London. At the time, there was very few journalists going to London. You know, they thought it was too individualistic, and it was. And I started to tell everybody, you cannot go to Milano and Paris without going to London. That's where there is true, young, unexpected creativity. So they started to come and to go. And one year I met Suzy Menkes, a very iconic journalist, still active today. And she said to me, I was at the first show of Jeremy Scott. She came to me, she said, Nicole, you're the only one I always see in the most unexpected places. Are you going to London? I said, yes, I am. So she said, well, I want to introduce you to someone. I said, fine, let's do it. So after a show, she takes me in her car. We go on the outskirts of London in some big old building with a glass roof, and we walk into this atelier. And there's this guy sitting on a bench, shy, young, Alexander McQueen. So wow. I saw his first collection in London, which was so amazing. And Saks bought it exclusively before any other store. And he was amazing. I mean, the show of McQueen and the show of Mugler were like, you know, Valérie still is giving us the honor to be with us today. She can tell you because very many times we sat together at those shows and it was like sometimes bringing tears to our eyes because it was so, so powerful. I remember every one of them. Almost.
That's great.
So what else do you want me to tell them?
So you found your way to Ferragamo at one point?
Yeah. So after 10 years in New York, completely out of the blue, I was very lucky because things came to me. I was not really, and I think that's the way you have to be. You know, you don't. I got a phone call. Ferragamo was looking for a fashion director. You know, they had not been showing anything on the runway, so they had met me because they were a huge business with socks, not in shoes mostly, men and women. So I started to speak to them because I was not really looking to to leave. But at the end, I got seduced by the history of the company, and I left after 10 years. And the reason I was leaving is also because Rosemary Bravo, the president, had left to go to Burberry, which she relaunched. And I knew that Philip Miller, the chairman, was going to retire after 2 years. So when I went to tell him I was leaving, he was furious. He said, how can you do that, leaving a family? I said, look, I'm not betraying you. I'm not going to Neiman. I'm not going to any other store. It's another path in my life. And I love Italy. I had always gone to Italy all my youth on vacation. My parents were in love with Italy, so I took the job. And it was fascinating because they had no coordination. Shoes were working on one side, handbags were on the other side. Ready to wear, they didn't have much left. So I made them, communicate, work together, do trend, etc. And I brought in a designer called Marc Audibet that Valérie knows to do the fashion. Marc Audibet is somebody that you probably have not heard of, but you should have, because he's the one who invented stretch with Dupont, Lacroix, stretch material. So, and he still works, but he's the one who started really the fashion business at Prada. It was not known. They didn't give your name at the time. He was in the back, but he was an incredible talent, and I studied in Firenze about 5 years, learning about, many other things. I didn't know how to make a shoes, the heritage of the company and things like that. And then after 5 years, I got a call from a friend who used to be a GMM at Saks, and she told me, are you interested to talk to Macy? So I laughed. I said, in 10 years in New York and more before on trip, I've never been to Macy's. She said, they want to talk to you. So I said, okay, let me talk to them. I kind of was tired of being in Firenze. It's kind of provincial, even though, I love a lot of things about Italy, of course. But I miss New York in a way. And I spoke with the team at Macy's, and I really fell in love with the history of the company, what Macy's represented and still does as part of the history of New York.
Yeah.
And I came, and I stayed with them about 10 years, and we did some incredible collaboration with European designer and art windows and a lot of things like that.
Elevated.
And I was involved with some of their private brands, so that's it.
Wonderful, thank you.
So now I'm independent. I opened my own consultant company, and I do some consulting when I like the people and when they want me.
That's the right fit. That's perfect. So obviously you touched on working in Paris and you talked a little bit about what it was like, but I typically have a lot of students who are interested in going to different cities and want to hear a little bit about the different attitudes in Paris versus New York, or the different work-life balance between the two. I wonder if you could touch on that in your experience.
You know, I think that what's interesting about the Paris scene, although New York has changed a lot too, is that, you know, Fashion Week, for instance, is much more international than New York is, although New York has become much more international than it was. But when you think of Paris in the 80s, and they're the one that recognize all the very famous Asian designers, you know, like Yohji Yamamoto, Issey Miyake, and today you have huge talent like Sakai showing there also. And so it's a more international scene, and it's a city that really attracts a huge amount of international journalists and press, much more than here, much more than London. You know, there is a history about the Paris couture and ready-to-wear. You should all read the book of Valérie Steele about it, and you will learn all the
What's
true
the title?
history.
What's the title? Paris Fashion. Cool. Check it out.
But I think in general, Paris is very open to foreign talent.
Yeah. What was the office like? I mean, did you feel like the hours are similar to New York hours, or people there work more or less similar?
I mean, it depends which brand you want. You know, everybody has had a kind of reinvention these days.
Yeah.
And you have big groups that are taking over all the brand, and then you see brands that used to be trendy in the 60s and 70s that are reinvented. And when you look at it, you wonder where they're going, because it has no DNA into it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
You know, and I won't give any name. But
Yeah. Have you ever found it difficult working in New York as a French native?
as a French person,
Yeah.
I was always very welcome.
Yeah.
I never had any issue, ever.
That's great.
And also I was raised by parents who adored America. My mother always said, our daughter lives in America, it's normal, because Americans saved us. That's how they felt.
Yeah.
So from being a child, and they had some American friend, I was used to coming here anyway from my youth in the business, coming here a lot. And it's, you know, and when people tells me, well, which city do you like best, New York or Paris? I love both. It's two different worlds.
Yeah. There's room in your heart for
I
both.
always use a French song. Entre les deux, mon cœur balance. Between, it's a child song. Between the two, my heart swings.
Aw. That's perfect. So I wonder if you could talk us through, I know in fashion, there is no such thing as a typical week or even day. I feel like it's always changing every day, which is what makes it so fun. But I wonder if you could talk us through a little bit about kind of a typical week for you as a fashion director.
When I was a fashion director.
Yes. Yeah.
The number one thing was to be curious, not to miss anything, to visit every possible place I could go to. I was into art show, contemporary, classic, any art show I could go to, I would go and absorb. I would go to any Flea market. I was obsessed with flea market from any country I went to. Whether I was in London, in Italy, in Paris, I was at the flea market every weekend, and I'm still at the flea market here every weekend, almost.
Yeah, that's
I
cool.
think it's very important. I was into all the trendy boutique and the concept store and department store, and just looking, being curious, not necessarily judging, but absorbing. And looking at runway constantly, looking at shoes, looking at bags, looking at makeup, looking at everything on a runway or off the runway, seated on a terrace and watching people go by. I mean, last week I went to the art fair, outside art fair. Do you know that art fair? It's every year on 18th Street. It's self-taught artists and a lot of art brut and a lot of naive art, and it's extremely inspiring. I mean, you look at a painting and you can create your own color palette. Wow. That's how I used to do. I used to fall in love with a painting, whether it's a Picasso or anybody not known, and I would see the balance of the right color palette. I used to tell my assistant when they worked on color thing, this doesn't rhyme. You have to make this color palette, this color story needs to rhyme. There needs to be an energy into it. To me, it was the easiest thing to do. When I was done with my storytelling or forecasting, I would pull out all my Pantone book and boom, 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 the palette was done.
Yeah.
So I think, flea market, art shows, runway to study, and look at people on the street. On Saturday, after this visit of the Outsider Art Fair, I sat at a cafe around there, and I was like, I just saw it on the runway.
Yeah.
It was like incredible. The crop top, the oversized puffer jacket, the mixture of white or with black or pastel combination, and hand-painted T-shirt and men's coat.
Yeah. So you go out, you're inspired by these different places.
You have to do all that.
What do you do with the information? Mm-hmm. What do you do with the information from there for Saks or for Macy's?
It stays here and here. I don't even make notes. I know that there is something to say about this theme or that stories, or, sometimes it can be a movie, sometimes it's a combination of things. But what I find very interesting today is the combination of lifestyle, the combination of tailoring with feminine, the combination of gender blending. I like that a lot. I saw a lot of shows of new rising designer. The first day of the New York Fashion Week was called, it was at the Canoe Studio, it was called New York Men's Day. And I was very impressed with what I saw there. And there were men's clothes, but it doesn't matter. There could be women's clothes as well.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very inspiring. And there was one fairly young designer based in California. His name is Stan. And Tristan Detweiler, and he works with recycled quilt and fabric, foreign fabric and American quilt, and he deconstructs them and reconstructs them. It is absolutely incredible, wow, the work he does. Yeah. Giving work to some, women that used to do those. I find that very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
But there is a big movement of that too.
Absolutely.
Early America,
But I guess what I'm wondering also is just what offices that you would interact with as a fashion office at a
The
Macy's,
list,
Saks.
to me, I'm a very individualistic person.
Uh-huh.
I would do my own thing. I would just subscribe to the minimum trend service. The one I really think is exceptional is, I would not go, I would like to see what they think when I'm done.
Yeah.
But I would never reinvent my own story. And the one that I think is really very prophetic is Lee Edelcourt, Trend Union. She always shows, she used to show here.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting trend service.
Yeah.
And I also like Mint Moda, who is a friend of mine too, and
Yeah.
she's very individualistic as well.
I'm just going to flash the check-in again for students because I realized I hadn't. Give me 1 second.
Do you have questions? I can't hear a thing.
She's wondering if you can repeat the
It's
trend.
too early. It's not the question moment. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, it's
But I
fine.
want to hear it.
The trend site that you just mentioned, Modal. Mint Modal. Yeah, thank you.
Mint Moda. I'll give you a list of, I think she's been
why
coming
this is
here
not-
in the past to make some speech.
Sorry, you guys. I froze my computer here. What happened? Okay. There we go.
But Lee Edelcourt
There you
for Trend Union is amazing. It's very kind of intellectual, and she does presentation that she goes to, like she went to Brazil last year, and she interviewed a lot of people based there to talk not just about fashion, but the craft,
But the fashion office's responsibility to the company is to.
I created a fashion office when I was at Saks. I hired a team, and we all worked together. One person was in charge of sportswear, another one was in charge of coats and dresses, ready to wear, whatever, children, menswear. So I had about 12 people.
Oh, that's great.
Each of them had a couple of assistants, depending. And the same thing happened when I went to Macy's.
Oh, that's great.
And we did 2 major presentations a year with a whole book to give to the buyer, with a color palette and the fabric inspiration and
Perfect.
the must-have, all of that.
Yeah. And so then the buyers took your expertise that you had used from hunting the market to be more informed.
Yeah, but when I was at Saks, I would do the buy with the buyer to make sure that they were focusing on the. Most of the time, they knew what they were doing, but it was a very interesting interaction because we pulled images for windows and for advertising and catalog and all of that.
And your office would also interact with marketing to help
All the
steer them?
time, yes.
Yeah.
When I came out of a show, I loved it. I had my list. I gave it to the head of sales or whatever, and it always had Windows, Vogue, Elle, Harper's Bazaar, New York Times. I gave all my list right there. So I knew I wanted to make sure we were the first, and I would have the exclusivity on the selection, because every other store was doing it much later. And I remember sometimes a designer would call and say, Nicole, would you mind very much changing your ad? Monsieur Armani would like to use that for their own advertising.
Highest
It was
compliment.
funny.
That's funny. And how does the role kind of cycle through each year? You said you did 2 main books that you published a year?
No, there was many books in between, and at the time and still do, you had the pre-collection, pre-spring, pre-fall. What's interesting today is that there is no season anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you look at a collection, it's winter, and you think it's summer.
It's true. The lines have blurred quite a bit. The weather has blurred quite a bit.
It's not anymore about the seasonality has a very different connotation.
Yeah, absolutely. What does an entry-level job look like for someone in a fashion office?
You know, it can be someone coming out of a fashion school, or it can be an assistant of a buyer within the store, or from another store, an assistant buyer, because it's always good to have a sense of business as well.
Yeah. So for someone out there that may be interested in, sorry, terrible allergies this week, that may be interested in working in a fashion office, what would you recommend as good qualities to highlight?
The quality?
To be hired. Good qualities, good skills.
You need to have a strong point of view, a sense of style, a sense of curiosity, somewhat of a humility. Nobody wrote the book. You can always learn something. You have to be, you know, sure of yourself, but open to listen and to have a dialogue. And if somebody is rude to you, be extra nice. It's the best way to respond. Fly over the cuckoo nest. I always say that. Just be yourself, but be nice. Don't be pretentious. We learn all our life, but be curious. And the one essential thing is to listen to your instinct. Listen to this little voice inside you, because we live in a society today where we forget that, or we are kind of put pressure on, you know. Just be convinced of what you want to do and what you think you are, but be open at the same time.
That's good advice. So
does it make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. What type of work would someone at the first level in a fashion office be doing on your team when you have a team of 12?
I mean, you know, I had most of the fashion director that worked with me, you know, stayed or moved on into the market or did other thing eventually, and some went into the buying team.
Oh yeah, later on. Yeah.
Because you know, if you really want to become a designer, yes, it's good to do. To make a stop in a fashion office, if there are any. I mean, how many stores have real fashion office today? I don't know.
Yeah.
And there isn't that many positions there.
Uh-huh.
But I think it's a good step to have an overview of what the business is like and what creativity is in the country or in general. It's a learning step.
Yeah. I wonder if you feel comfortable sharing with us where your favorite place to work over the years has been and why that was.
Yeah.
Your favorite.
My favorite designer?
Your favorite place, your favorite experience in work.
Paris, my beginning.
My
beginning, yes. Because I met and discovered incredible talent. And then Saks, because then I also promoted and discovered many talent from other places in Europe. And here too.
Yeah, that's great.
The whole generation, you know, of Asian designers that live here and that have made a pass. And
great. What are you most proud of from your career? What do you have the most pride in from your career path?
My pride? I don't have pride. I have, happiness and joy from the people, from the talent I have met and the talent I have promoted and supported on both sides of the ocean. And I was always step back, and it was never about me, it was always about him or her.
Yeah.
Today things have changed a lot, but the best example is the mood at a fashion show runway. You would be feeling like honored to sit and attend a presentation. Today, when you sit, you have to ask the person next to you, "Excuse me, I can't see."
Yeah.
There was no iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You sat and looked and absorbed
Paid
everything
attention.
visually. And it went straight to your soul sometime.
Yeah. That's good. Over the years, you have certainly met some really, really interesting people. I wonder if you have any stories of
You want to hear stories?
of the most interesting person you've met, or the couple most interesting people you've met in your career.
Karl Lagerfeld was an example.
Karl Lagerfeld, did you say? Yeah.
When we did I called his to do a collaboration with Macy's, and there was talk, among the lawyer, etc. And one night at 9:00, the lawyer called me at home and said, "Mr. Lagerfeld wants you to know first that he's going to say yes to the contract."
Oh, great.
And I had goosebumps. I was so excited.
That's amazing.
But, I have many stories.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you had to lean on your network of people to move your career forward?
No.
You mentioned a couple times.
I told you I'm a kind of an individualistic person. I was really very lucky.
Yeah.
I love what I did. I didn't want to study, but I learned a lot. My parents were my father and my mother would take me to museum every weekend in Paris. We would look at everything, museum, street, architecture. My father was fascinated by history and architecture. My mother was a total free spirit, but also she loves beauty. She read a lot. So I think I was, totally inspired by this and the way that they supported me and let me go my own way. But I was lucky to be introduced to this. Before going to this fashion office, I worked for 3 months in a haute couture company which doesn't exist anymore, called Jacques Haim. And I was passing the needle. I would stand in the little room where they fitted the customer, and I was standing there passing the pin and looking the guy doing the canvas on the customer. You learn from A to Z.
Yeah.
Going to a big trade fair of fabric is very important too. I hope you all go when there is a trade fair like Première Vision or any of those fabric trade fair happening in New York. It's very important to go there and to see what they are showing. There is always a big trend place to visit.
Yeah.
So you have an idea about color direction, about print direction, about what are the new fabric, is it about plaid, is it about animal print, which is really what's happening now, by the way.
That's one of my next questions.
Like
what do you
crazy.
feel like is...
The plaid
Your favorites.
I'm having fun watching all the traditional material being reinvented, like plaid, but not boring flat plaid. Plaid combined among themselves, different plaid mixed together, or plaid with denim, or plaid with faux fur, anything. And then all the idea of shine, silver, essentially lots and lots of silver. And fabric treatment like patent and shine, a ton of black patent or many runway, but also color patent, dark green, bright blue, you know.
Yeah.
Animal print is still a big thing also. Floral, garden floral. I don't see as much influence of art print as I saw in the past season, but I see a lot of artwork like remolding and new shape and new draping and volume, lots of still sleeve interest.
Great.
Looking at me. Say something.
Do you have a favorite piece of clothing you bought for yourself that has stayed with you through the years?
No, I sold everything. No, a few years ago, I had to get space, and I started to put together on racks my Chloé, my Saint Laurent, my Ungaro, my whatever, Thierry Mugler, and people came to see it, and one person said to me, you know, this is really a collection, don't sell it to, don't put it in a vintage place, they'll come every, you have to find somebody to buy the whole thing, and I did a guy who was based in Philadelphia and was only selling to a museum and high-end vintage shop. He came, he took everything in one shot. I was so happy.
Yeah.
I had no nostalgia because it was handled very well. The clothes were photographed in a catalog, and I was just happy that it was handled well. And then I gave a lot to some young girl I know that I like, and they wear it like incredible. So, but personally, I like, as a designer, for things I might buy, I like Dries Van Noten. He's a Belgian designer. He shows in Paris. And what I like about his clothes is that they have no timing. It's very individualistic, and they are clothes that you can collect. And people here sometimes say to you, "Is that new?"
That's
you know the question, "Is that new?"
Yeah.
No, it's not, but I don't tell them.
Reinvented. What piece of advice would you give to students who are just entering the industry these days? What piece of advice would you offer to students who are just about to enter the industry for the first time?
I told them, I think I said, you know, you need to have a point of view and you need to listen to your little instinct.
There's a number of students in the room, I think probably close to half, who are interested in launching their own brand.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Do it. If you can, you know, be supported financially to do it. But I'm seeing some recognized designer now. They started like you want to do it. They did it themselves. They did the clothes themselves, and they show the clothes, and eventually it will lead them somewhere.
Great. Why don't I turn it over to you guys? Because I'm sure that there are a lot of questions out there. Okay.
I can't hear.
What kind of characteristics have you looked for when you're scouting new designers that have made them successful?
What kind of character?
Yeah, in their quality of product. You know, what do you look for in a new designer that you're gonna tell your company about?
I look for true inspiration. I look for clothes that are individualistic, which by that I don't mean, necessarily extreme. I mean clothes that have their own inspiration. Clothes that, of course, you get inspiration by this one or that one, but clothes that are really created with your own spirit. I think it's very important to have a very wide view of what's happening today, not just in America, but all over the world. Even looking at a designer from Japan and designer from Belgium, and very often they show in Paris anyway. So, and then you let it sit, and then you think about, it's your own spirit. It's like a writer. It's like, any kind of creativity. If you are in front of a painting and you want to paint, you're not going to necessarily go and copy a Van Gogh or a Picasso.
Yeah.
But you can look at a color palette within that painting and do something in your world. Does that answer your question? No, I mean...
What other questions are out there? Yeah, back here.
I can't hear.
Where did you do the most networking? Networking, meeting new people, and how did you maintain relationships? Every time you talked about, someone gave you a call and said, you want to come over? How did you build those relationships over the years?
Going to showroom, going to trade fair, going to listening to a journalist telling me, like Susie Marquez, who took me to meet McQueen. Or there's a lot there's a lot of even in here, the CFDA does things to promote young, unknown, or rising designer.
Yeah.
So you have to keep your eyes open all the time.
Back here.
So can you talk about how trends work when designers release new collections? Like, for example, how was it that in fall 2021, designers all of a sudden have like a similar
She's wondering if you can talk about how general trends emerge. When you talk about an entire runway season and all the trends that kind of rise to the top. How does that sort of happen?
Okay, so you start with New York, right? So you look at a runway, and suddenly you see one color or one fabric, you like it, you take the image out, and then you see London, then you see Milan, and you may see the thing emerging and become more and more important. And when you're done with Paris, you do a final analysis, and then you know that, yes, tailoring is back. Yes, romantic is still valid, but what's interesting is that suddenly I'm just giving an example, okay? So a ruffled dress under a quilted puffer, oversized, who would have thought of it? A trench coat done in patterned color right over an evening dress, or an evening evening skirt with a sweater. It's become to be a must-have look, the skirt and the sweater. But what kind of skirt? It's an asymmetric skirt. It's a sheer skirt. It's a ruffled skirt. It's a long skirt. It's a mini skirt. But it's always with a sweater. Sometimes it's striped, sometimes it's oversized, sometimes it's crochet, sometimes it's cable stitching, big. That's what makes it very interesting when you start putting your idea together and you edit the ideas.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, but it's about curiosity. Initially you go with what appealed to you, and then you start making your story.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Sure.
She likes it?
Yes.
No, but you know, I don't mind a dialogue. If you disagree, raise your finger and say it.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just curious, it's like, for example, in like spring and summer.
I can hear you, yeah. I mean, it's
The mask.
yeah, the masks make it hard, but it's okay.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, I guess, for example, in spring, summer 2022, like, if multiple designers are using like the same print all of a sudden, or they're using the same silhouette or different colors, like, where are they getting that information that this is what we should be receiving? Is it a coincidence? Are they getting trend reports? Like,
So I guess back a step. You observe what you see on the runways, and you're able to then kind of, glean a high-level summary of what you found to be the big ideas. But what she's trying to understand is, how do designers seem to have similar themes in any given year?
But that's a big mystery. But it's different interpretation. I'm talking about the skirt and the sweater. There's so many different types of knitwear now.
Yeah.
Ribbed, cable stitch, patched, re-embroidered, and the skirt can go from mini to maxi, from slim and draped to ruffle and layered, and then they wear the skirt over the pants. Even guys do that. They wear skirt over pants.
Yeah.
And you know what? I like it.
Yeah.
I like the look. It's done in a very modern way. As I told you earlier, I saw a few men designers doing that at the beginning of New York Fashion Week. One is called Thierry Singh. He's from India, but he works here. And it's all about, moto jacket kind or regular tailor jacket, and the long fitted skirt, a robe kind of all that. Looks fabulous.
Yeah.
Beautifully made.
Hopefully that helps a little. I mean, I think it's an evolution as well. I think you don't usually just see a trend kind of pop up out of nowhere. There's some sort of rise to it that makes it so that you're seeing it everywhere.
As I said,
Yeah.
what's really interesting today is, yes, the must-have, but how each designer reinterpret lifestyle, or how they combine the lifestyle, how it's becoming very current to see dressy with sporty,
Yeah.
tailored with soft, feminine, masculine, you know what I mean, active and romantic. But look at you, I was waiting outside taking photographs because I was a bit early. Some of you guys looks like just out of the runway. That's why I'm saying it's very important to see, to look.
Yeah.
Go to the park on Sunday and look at people passing by. I did that yesterday on the way back from the west side. I was like, sit on a terrace
And be inspired,
and look.
for sure. Your follow-up question? Yeah.
Yeah, what would you recommend young designers should do to get noticed by buyers?
What can a young designer do to get noticed by a fashion office?
What kind of a designer?
What can a young designer do to make sure they're noticed by a fashion office? You know, to get their collection seen.
I think it's very good to get in a showroom that will do that for you. Of course, the showroom will take a percentage on the sales, but it's very hard to be both a creative person and a business person. It's important to understand the business and to understand. That's why I said earlier, you need to see what's happening in the store, what you see on the floor, even though there is less and less store in New York. But it's important that you go and shop, from high-end to mass market, and see what those stores do and see what clients do. It's not just about Zara or about, but even if you go to a very high-end, sophisticated boutique like, what's the name of, Comme des Garçons, it's so inspiring to see not just their visual, but what they have. And so in terms of making the business with a store, if you have the collection, I think there is no other way than either being in a trade fair, but I don't know how trade fairs are still existing today, that give, some of them give space for free or very little to some new designer, or they used to do it.
Yeah.
Or CFDA used to help designers do showing. I remember CFDA having a big showroom in Paris during Fashion Week, saying American in Paris, it was called.
Wow.
And there was about 10, 12 designers every season showing in there.
Wow.
That shows.
That's nice. Thank you. Right here.
What can be said about fashion customers as a whole, from luxury to moderate price markets?
What?
What can be said about fashion? I'm sorry, repeat it.
Like customers' integrity across different markets. Like what's something that they all share from luxury to like Macy's?
What is something that all consumers have in common across different price points? From a Macy's to a Saks, for example.
They don't. They, when I was there, 30% of the business of Macy's in ready-to-wear was done with their own brand. And then their big business is done with the licenses of the 5 key, what they consider key designer. Tommy Hilfiger, Michael Kors, Ralph Lauren,
Calvin Klein.
Calvin Klein. Those are the big business. It's all licenses. For me, when I looked at it, is it really the spirit of the designer? But that's called business.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm being very honest.
That's great. Honesty is good in this room.
I remember one season, speaking of that, the GMM, General Merchandise Manager of Macy's, came to me and says, Nicole, I want you to do a special presentation for Ralph Lauren. I looked at him for the team. I said, are you kidding me? I said, do you think they're going to come and listen to what I have to say? I said, let me think about it.
Yeah.
So I thought about it very quickly, and then I said, okay, I know what to do. I kept my own presentation exactly as it was, except that at the end of each of my trend story, I went in their archives through my, Vogue Runway or any of those things. I went 5 years back on their runway collection, and I would do a finale saying, this is how Ralph would do.
Yeah. Oh.
It was easy. I
Yeah.
didn't change my thinking process, but I was incorporating their essence and going back to their few years back eventually
Yeah.
was a good point because it was showing respect to the brand.
Yeah.
So I did that. So they were impressed. Now, did it really influence them?
design.
The license.
It's hard to turn that ship.
But I did my job.
Yeah. Right here.
You wanted to say something, I'm sorry.
Can you speak a little bit more about the McQueen show that you saw?
About what?
The Alexander McQueen show?
The first Alexander McQueen show that you saw.
It was in London. It was a small show. It was not the extravaganza that he would later on do in Paris. The music was fabulous, and the clothes were already very, very, very strong. And then when he started to show in Paris, he went to the most unbelievable, unexpected places, just like Mugler would do. Except that he had money from the fabric, from the fragrance behind him, so that allowed him to do some incredible production, like having key models, of course, at the time, models were the big star, and going back to Mugler or even McQueen, I remember the chairman of Saks saying to me after the show, what is this? What can we buy? And you think we can buy it? I said, yes, come to the showroom.
Yeah.
Because this is a show, and initially shows were made for the press. Yes, the buyer, but it was for the press. So they were attracting the press to have, something so creative and inspiring that they would get a free editorial eventually. But in the showroom, you see the clothes, close to you. You see a jacket, how it's cut, how it's made. You don't necessarily need to buy it with the same skirt, or you can translate it, not change it, but you see the clothes without all the extravaganza that comes on a runway.
Yeah, right here. Would you be able to speak in the microphone? Maybe we'll hear you a little better.
You hear that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat? Can you talk in the microphone? What has been the most, the best part about watching a brand launch? The most challenging about launching a brand. You mentioned launching a private label brand at Macy's. Yeah. And speaking with them.
You need to have price points that are relevant to the customer you want to reach in your mind initially. And you have to have competitive prices. How do you position yourself? Are you contemporary? Are you designer? Are you, what's the approach? Who is the store you want to reach? Who is the customer you want to reach? And are your prices, where is your production going to be? It's all of that.
Yeah. Knowing your target
Having
customer
an
at the outset.
idea and having people that are professional on the business side to support your idea. There is some guy here in New York that do that.
Yeah. That help you find your path.
That do that with young talent that can advise them and consult with them, and if they think they have the talent to expand, then they will eventually support it.
Yeah. Hopefully, does that answer your question?
I mean, is that answering your question?
Well, I just don't know. Maybe she's not able to answer that question as well as someone else because she's never really launched a brand herself from a challenging standpoint to be able to say, yeah. So I don't know. I think she's saying what she's seen out there in the industry and what was successful and what made them successful is knowing their own point of view. So probably the most challenging is just knowing who you are at the outset so that you can represent, united front.
It's a style, and it's a quality, and it's a production, and it's a price point, and who you're going to reach, who you want to reach. Who is your muse as a client? Who do you want to reach?
Yeah.
And you may want to reach, you may not have a specific profile in mind either. Because, don't forget the quote, it's not about age, it's about attitude.
Yeah.
And it's not, and there is this whole gender blending as well today. I mean, 10 years ago, I went to the chairman of Macy's and I said, look at such and such brand in Paris. They do boys and girls in the same shop. Why don't you open a department with basic, traditional, but modern clothes? The puffer, the denim, the oversized sweater, the cardigan sweater, the white shirt. Why don't you give a space to one of your buyers and do that for he and she? It was very avant-garde.
Yeah.
They didn't get it.
No.
But look what's happening today.
Yeah. Tamara.
You almost answered the question I have. My question is, how did you sell these avant-garde ideas to the business person who said no, or the buyer who said that's not good, or the professor who doesn't like your design?
How do you sell your ideas to the company as a whole? Like
When I was at Saks, it was incredible. Because the chairman had hired me himself, and the president was Rosemary Bravo, and she was passionate about fashion like I was. And we were a team. We were a real team. We came in any showroom in Paris, Milan, New York, wherever, and we got whatever we wanted because there was a vibe and a respect for creativity and fashion. And when I wanted something, I'll give you an example. I was in Paris, and I would stay until the end because I would sometimes go with the buyer, next to the buyer and make sure we were doing the right, not that we were a team. I didn't tell the buyer what to do, but I would, consult a little bit and make sure we were doing this to cover the window or the yard, whatever. And a few times I would call her. She was back in New York, and I would say, Rosemary, there is so-and-so, a new designer showing, it's fabulous. Everybody's gone, what do we do? Yeah, she said, leave me alone, buy it. And I was not a buyer. And I bought it. We got a lot of people like that that were starting, including Margiela.
I think you win some, you lose some sometimes.
And I don't want to speak negative, okay? Because you're all starting and you need to follow your instinct and to go for what you believe in, and etc., etc. But lots of stores today are thinking numbers before creativity, and you know, and numbers sure are important, but there should be a percentage of the volume of the business that goes to help new talents.
Yeah, yeah. In the back in the white shirt.
I have a question about fashion industry. Like when you look at
Come down.
he was say there are so many times to say
Yeah, would you be able to come down to the microphone? I'm sorry, we're having a hard time.
I just want to ask, like, when you look at back to 2000 for items, when you look at all here and general Australia has cement diversity line, and right now when you look at Balenciaga, everyone who start using fashion that always turn to our direction.
So your comment is around the 1990s into the 2000s, there was so much new and inspiring things coming on the runway, and now things feel a little flat.
The 90s were amazing.
Yes,
Yes, that's why you had Mexico.
Yeah.
I was part of it too. No, I agree. The 90s were an incredible moment, but so were the 80s.
Is your question, why do you think that is? That it's dull right now? Is fashion dead? Let's hope not, right?
I think talent is an international. It's not one country. I think there has always been huge, powerful talent and smaller talent and in every country. And it's the combination and the editing of the whole thing that makes it interesting. I never have a final point of view until the end of all the fashion weeks. Because sometimes you're done with Paris is the last, now we're going to the last day of Paris. Sometimes at the end you realize that maybe you missed something in New York that didn't grab you, but that will come back unexpectedly, maybe in Milano, something, oh, I didn't like it there, but it's happening here, and then you put two and two together. It's to be analytic. You have to be analyzing everything. And be open. Be open. Even if you don't like it, that's fine. Move on. You know, don't get fixated on something that
to share.
Come back.
Yeah. I can share her contact. Yeah. Are you okay with me sharing your contact information with them, or how should they get in touch?
My
Is
email,
that the best?
yes.
Your email? Okay.
You can see my Instagram.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't always show my dog.
Your dog.
It's easy.
Yes, in the back.
I wanted to know, as Indian designer, what is stopping Indian designers to presenting their clothes and inspired or amazing? Like, what are the buyers if they're not able to share to Indian designers that is stopping them from having Indian designers sell their clothes in stacks or maybe, or what should more do?
As an Indian designer, she's wondering, she's not seeing many in a Saks or a Macy's, and what could be recommended to
You know,
get
it's
seen?
funny because I saw two Indian designers in New York during Fashion Week. One is called Lacroix. You know him? I was invited to his opening party here in New York. I liked it very, very much. And the other one is this menswear designer called Thierry Mugler, who showed the first day. I think New York is opening more to foreign designer than that's one of the things I told you at the beginning. Paris is Paris because traditionally couture started there. You know, the whole history of French fashion and everything. But in India, you have a lot of craft and factories and embroidery, even a famous French embroiderer like Monsieur Le Sage. You heard about Le Sage, Lesage. Le Sage used to be his own company in Paris doing the traditional handwork. Now they were purchased by the Chanel group. So they're part of Chanel, and a lot of it is made in India. Lacroix has does beautiful dresses, embroidery, but it's very young and romantic and fresh and charming and colorful.
So would it be, you think, that more Indian designers should feel encouraged to show in different cities, like New York and
Yeah.
Paris? And
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's very important to try to take your work outside of your own bubble.
Yeah.
Like you want other clients. You want more clients than just selling in America. I mean, it's fine. You sell in California, in Florida, maybe, but of course you would want to be international or try to open store, client and specialty store or concept shop in Paris or in London or in Milano or wherever. That's what sometimes it's good to try to investigate who are the showroom that could help when you have the collection ready.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so you have to pay, if you're lucky, you pay on a percentage on what they sell. And some showroom here show in Europe as well. You didn't have
Hopefully
any
that's helpful.
showroom come and talk to them.
A showroom?
You didn't have any showroom people coming to speak to them.
We have people coming on a sales team later on in the semester.
Maybe I can send you someone.
Yeah, if you have some ideas, that'd be helpful. Yeah.
Not that you would get it necessarily then, but it's nice for them to know.
Yeah. Right here. Great question. How is working in fashion today different from when you first started out? So you don't think it's different? You think it's the same?
No,
Yeah.
I think shouldn't be.
Well, what about how social media or, you know, just the digital age has changed things? Yeah.
I think it's, I don't know, I'm wondering if people are not getting tired of it by now. In
Maybe.
some case.
Maybe, yeah. I think in general, trends move a lot faster through the public than they probably did, you know, in the early 90s, late 80s. Would you agree with that?
What are you doing? Drawing?
I'm good at that and also taking notes.
Taking photos.
Taking notes.
Oh, so cute. No, I was wondering if you were designing something.
Yeah. Wilson.
What are your favorite emerging brands right now?
Do you have any favorite emerging brands right now?
My favorite emerging brand. But I think she's already recognized. I like Sakai very much. I like Marine Serre, S-C-R-R-E. I saw the work of an Ukrainian designer on Vogue Runway, which I think is quite beautiful. It's very minimalistic and very pure, but exquisite, I thought. I thought Charles de Villemorin in Paris was going to be great. The first collection I loved, it was very inspired, the kind of liquid sample, print and everything. I don't like the new collection at all. Who do you like? Tell me who you like.
There's a brand called Pearl.
Who?
Earl.
Earl? Yeah.
They do, I'm interested in like brands that are focused on American sportswear and making that modern. I feel like looking like Bonnie Passion, all of her like ideas have been sort of become Europeanized and like brands in France.
Can you repeat the name?
Bonnie,
The one you're just speaking of. Bonnie Cashin.
like all of her innovation.
But when you look at the collection, you don't think of you. You're trying to be objective, right? You have to be objective. You can't look at a collection, any of you, thinking would I wear it. You can, but it's not the point. The point is the aesthetic, the harmony, the beauty of the workmanship, and is it wearable? Not for you. Is it wearable? Is it beautiful? Even if it's not, even if it's extreme, there has to be something that lifts your spirit and that you recognize as being artistically beautiful, the art of craft.
I would say that I'm interested in brands that are making American like folk art and our own culture. I feel like
Excuse me.
He's interested in brands that are interested in kind of representing American culture, like folk art.
American.
Brands that represent American culture.
Yeah.
I think a lot of American brands have become focused on European culture and
So, for instance, okay. So what do you think about what's happening with denim today? How it's reinvented? Do you like it?
which brands are we
Which one are doing that? Look at Bob Runway from A to Z. It's it.
What do you think?
I love it.
Yeah. I think
I love the fact that it's not just Levi's jean anymore. It's much more than that.
yeah.
I think it was on the runway of one of the big high-end designers yesterday. It was an oversized trench coat. It was amazing.
Yeah. Right, here.
When you were a buyer at Saks, were you looking for specific pieces or like a specific customer in mind when you were going to these shows?
Do you have a customer in mind when I was at Saks? Yes?
Yeah, when you would pull together your fashion direction.
Sometimes, yes. Yeah. But you know, there was a department for advanced designer. There was a department for more where they used to go contemporary or
What was the customer like?
they had to. I think at the time it was essential to have the right advertising and to have the right product in the catalog and to do amazing artistic windows, you know. And then there was a department in the store that would call their customer when they had special things to show them and to sell. So it's a different approach, you know. It's like when you go to a boutique and it's a good shop, they know what you're looking for. And sometimes it's unexpected, it's something you don't expect that you attract to. It's called impulse buy. And see, impulse buy today is more important than ever because, you know, look at this situation today. We've all been locked up for almost 3 years. And the store were closed and people were afraid to go anywhere, rightly so. So if you know, I saw some cartoons, some things the other day where they were at home, where they're in front of the thing. So the top is nice and here you have your pyjama pants or your short or
Hasn't made for a very fun fashion. Yeah, COVID Zooming has not made for very fun fashion. That's very true. Any more questions? In the way back in the purple?
My question was, I researched that you were working with Ferragamo and Macy, and then in contrast with multi-retailers like Macy's and Saks, how would you say, as a visual storyteller that you gave to record, how would you say the processes are different when you are setting the goals for the season or when you're planning to buy those? I want to know how the difference is, like how you're going to do it.
How does the job differ when you are working for a brand like Ferragamo versus a department store versus like Saks?
It's kind of another world. For instance, I'll give you one little story. When I started there and I saw the logo that Salvatore had created, the original logo, they were not using it anymore, and it was beautiful. And I said, you need to put it back in your shoes. That's your DNA. That's your logo. You need to put it back. Finally, they did it, but initially they didn't get it at all. I had a friend who was the fashion director at the time of Harper's Bazaar, and she called me and she said, "Do you have logo? I'm doing an article, I want logo from you." I said, "We don't have enough, but I'll get it done." And I did. We had jersey, we did it. And we sold it and we were on the article. But you know, you work in a company that has such a strong history. It's very hard for them to accept, to change their way of looking at the opportunity of the market. For instance, Saks was doing millions and millions of dollars in shoes. And they have a historical shoes with the bow on top, the Grand bow with the button on a ballerina called the Vara. I took the shoes and I said, "Okay, it's flat, it's a ballerina." I said to the designer, "Could you please make it as a pump, a sexy pump with 12 centimeter heel?" And they did it, and it looked amazing. And the Saks buyer came, look at the shoes and say, "Okay, we like it, but we want it on 7 centimeter. I said, "What? You're making a sexy modern pump into an old lady shoe? Is that what you're going to do?" They were buying thousands and thousands of shoes. They did it for the old lady.
Yeah.
This is just little example. I said to them, "Go to the archive. Salvatore created so many shoes for all the stars in Hollywood. You know the history, right? The wedge and everything." I said, "You know what we should do? It's maybe not going to be volume, but you should take the key shoes, 5 pair, no more, and do limited edition, and you get all the prices." They didn't want to do it. They do it after I was gone. But they did it eventually.
Yeah.
It's just a little example. I mean, I don't want to go on this. But
Yeah. Thank you.
sometimes it works. Sometimes, you need to come back and be passionate. And
I think we have time for maybe one more.
it's like a story. You tell them. I was lucky to work with a team in the 90s that was totally wanting to change the image, etc. And they took a chance. It was not necessarily new designer. We did that all the time. It was not necessarily big volume, but it was helping the brand and being recognized by the press for having avant-garde product model.
Yeah. One more question out there, unless we're done. Read them all? Right here. I thought I saw. Looking back at your career, is there anything you would have done differently?
That's what?
That you would have done differently?
No.
Nailed it.
I love what I did. I was blessed to be able to work and meet such fantastic people and to be supported and to go with my conviction and my instinct. And I was very lucky. And I have no nostalgia. I look, there is a quote from the Sanskrit, which I found in a little frame at the flea market years back. I will send it to you. You can send it to them because it's really pretty. It says, "Look at today, because tomorrow is over, and looking at today will make a better future."
I like that.
From the Sanskrit. I put it in my bedroom,
Yeah.
on my wall.
That's a good one. And it's very true for fashion, I would say.
Huh?
Yeah, very true for fashion, yeah?
Things that annoy me, there has been many, of course. Short memory. Yes.
Yeah.
Mean people, rude people, fly over. That's it. Don't keep it in you.
Yeah. Nicole, this was amazing. Thank you so much for coming.
I wish you the best. I really do. From my heart. I know it's a difficult time, and I really, really wish you the best. Go for what you believe in.
Thank you.
The world needs talent.
Yes, a lot of talent in this room. So you guys, just a reminder, these are our guests next week. If you want to send anything in ahead of time, please do for your lecture prep questions. And I will send you our end of class survey. This is actually anonymous. It is a mid-semester check-in with you guys so that you can give some real-time feedback on the class. So I will email it out to everyone now. And if anyone has any questions or wants to turn anything in, please come down and see me.